Looking around the wide receiver landscape, what is about to happen with some potential trades and what it would mean for both the players and for, of course, fantasy football for the rest of the season. I am joined today by Kevin Szafraniec, who you can follow on Twitter at theCatDadFF. We are posting this show up on the RotoViz Fantasy Football channel, the flagship show. We'll be having some changes to the podcast scheduling over the coming weeks and months, but I hope myself to be posting a couple of shows per week on this feed, along with then posting shows with Sean Siegel on RotoViz Overtime. I'll be trying to get some guests on throughout the course of the off season, and I'm delighted to first up here be joined with one of our top guys over on rotoviz.com, a man who is involved in the RotoViz Rookie Guide. It's Kevin, as I mentioned at the start of the show. So, Kevin, as we get ready to dive into some wide receiver conversation, it is an interesting point off the calendar as we are post-combine. The league year is about to, come into full effect, and then we're in a situation where some players have been put in the trade block, some players have been cut, and it's up to us to decide where they may land. So, how are you feeling here on the 6th of March as we get ready to get into the weeds?
I'm feeling great, as we were talking about before the show. We had a little break in the weather this past week, so it was nice to kind of get out of hibernation mode and kind of get out into the world and feel the sun on my face. So now it's snowing again as I look out the window before we get started. But I mean, it was nice to have the little reprieve, and I think all of next week is supposed to be nice. So I'm just kind of itching right now to just kind of live life a little bit. But in the interim, I'm just going to keep grinding away on articles and keep rolling.
Yeah, and it's again, you mentioned some of the weather conditions. It's been up and down here in recent times, but it looks like here is actually, and I'm saying here, Ireland is going to be pretty dry and even about to say it, potentially sunny next week. So, we don't get that around here too often. So we'll look forward to it if it does happen to come into play. I mentioned the rookie guide at the start there. Sean, Kevin, and Blair coming together, putting out a great piece looking at all the prospects. They had the pre-combine, now there's the post-combine. All 3 editions, you will get one post the NFL draft, are available up on rotoviz.com. You can go and purchase the guides there. You will get the back editions as well as the future edition. And that will give you all the content that's in there as they break down all the player profiles ahead of the NFL draft to give you some nuggets of information that you should be tracking here moving forward. I want to hit one quick one, Kevin, because I don't think there's a lot to discuss in this. When we discussed this in the show we did maybe 3-4 weeks ago, we talked about T. Higgins. We were thinking Washington Commanders, that would be nice. We're going to talk about a different receiver who's at the Washington Commanders already, but T. Higgins, there is reports that teams are still sniffing around the potential to trade for T. Higgins, even though he has been franchise tagged. I think that, he either signs an extension with the Bengals now, he stays under the franchise tag. I don't see him moving. Just any chance of him shifting gears here and ending up on a different roster, or are those hopes and dreams just crushed?
I don't know if they're crushed yet, because seeing him, play his tag this year is about $26 million. So I could see him sticking with Cincinnati at least for this year. But I'm still just looking at their cap situation and knowing that Jamar Chase, the team's openly said that Jamar is going to get an extension. He's probably going to be the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. So it just, they could obviously mortgage their future or mortgage the defense in order to bring them both back. But I think there is still a chance that T does get moved because he might just be a 1-year rental. I just don't see how they can comfortably fit in Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. Obviously Joe Burrow said he's willing to restructure his contract and things like that. So the short answer is I still do feel like there's a chance that he does move, especially if they can't come to agreement on a long-term contract. I think the deadline for that is like the beginning of June, I want to say, for contract
plenty of time.
But I still wouldn't, I wouldn't say that it's a sure thing that he's 100% going to be with Cincinnati. It's looking that way. But still, if they can't come to agreement on something that works, I still think that they could easily just, move him somewhere. And they're going to get a good return for him as well. So I guess the short answer is I'm not 100% sure. I feel like 80% sure that T. Higgins will be in Cincinnati next year, but not 100%.
Yeah, 80 is probably a fair reflection. I might even go to 85. But, you talk about getting, the contracts for Joe Burrow, Chase, and him under the cap and things like that. And then we're talking about Cincinnati here, so maybe that will be tough. You see then teams like the Philadelphia Eagles who love to shuffle things into different situations and be able to get the contracts done, as they extended Saquon Barkley to a $41 million contract over the last couple of days. So teams can get it done if they want to get it done. And sometimes I know it is about leveraging the future and things like that, but when you have players of this ability, it doesn't come around, very often that you have a 3-0 on offense like Chase, Burrow, and Higgins, and maybe they just think that this is the window. Let's go for it. But I think that they'll keep him for this 1 year anyway. It makes it tricky with a lot of these teams where you have him for the 1 year on the franchise tag and you could move, but the team that then is moving for him, unless they think that their window is in the next 2 to 3 years where they're going to have to trade the assets for him and then sign him to the contract, it's going to make it tricky for them as well to invest that capital when next year there's a potential to just get him in free agency versus giving up the capital as well along with that. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. But most of the stuff we talk about today is going to fall into that bracket. Before we get to Deebo Samuel, who I teased at a moment ago that we were going to talk about, DK Metcalf is on the block. Looks like him and the Seahawks were having negotiations over a contract extension, but he has requested a trade away. Both teams obviously not coming to an agreement at that point. Doesn't say that they won't yet come to an agreement as we move forward. We've seen similar kind of scenarios last year with Brandon Ayuk, but it sounds like the Seahawks are looking for a first-round pick and a third-round pick for DK Metcalf. Obviously, 27 years old at this point of his career, has been very talented throughout. But how do you feel about that? A wide receiver who I will say is going to be 28, but not until December. So there is still a window here for multiple years with Metcalf. If it wasn't a first-round pick, I think probably more teams interested, but I think there will still be a market for him at that price. The Packers had been rumored previously. Again, then when you get into the capital that you have to give up plus the contract, sounds like he's looking for around about $30 million per season for this contract. So there's a lot to go in and invest. But you look at a team then like Green Bay, who have had their wide receiver issues. You have to have the balance. Do you want the wide receiver issues or do you want the wide receiver? Which one are you picking? So it is going to be intriguing. The other part is there was reports they seem to be rubbished in terms of what the Packers at the draft time, some of the players that maybe the Seahawks might have wanted back. It seems like those talks probably didn't actually happen, but a first and a third could turn into player plus picks, for example. Firstly, do you think that's a fair market value if you were trying to acquire him? And what's your thoughts here, just in terms of Metcalf at this stage of his career? Is there still something left in the tank?
The first question, I mean, if you're going to be paying the guy $30 million, I would think that maybe a late first round. I mean, I can't foresee anybody early in the stages, or with the early draft slot, really giving that up for DK. But
yeah,
in that regard,
those teams, and that's where it probably fits again with the likes of the Packers, who are playoff team who got eliminated early. You're kind of in that mid to late 20s range. Probably makes it somewhat possible. I can't see anything above the mid 20s being given up as a first round pick in this situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where kind of something like the Raiders giving their second round pick or New England giving their second round pick and maybe a conditional pick on top of that would make a little more sense. And a lot of the teams that I've currently seen kind of rumored to be interested aren't very exciting. Like I mentioned, the Patriots could be exciting with Drake May. The Raiders, we don't know. We really don't know what they're doing, but like those,
they could be exciting if they get a quarterback.
Yeah, or even like Pittsburgh doesn't seem that exciting. I mean, but it's all these teams that generally you see mocked wide receivers in the first round. I think one of the teams that would be really, really fun, you think of like two monster wide receivers on the outside, would be Houston. If you put Nico and DK together, would be really fun. So that's really.
They also obviously have a need with. They're going to let Diggs test free agency, but it sounds like Tank Dell, with his second surgery this week, is going to miss the entirety of this upcoming season. So they are going to have a limited depth chart there at the minute. But again, it is the the cost that you are going to have to give up to get Metcalf plus the contract. And maybe with Houston over the next couple of years, what the rookie contract situation are, depending on what happens with the Raiders. But you mentioned Drake May and the Patriots. They feel like somewhere where like they need a wide receiver. T. Higgins has been rumored to go there for quite some time. Obviously, we talked about would something like that happen or not, but they feel like they could take the hit on the contract as well based on having the rookie quarterback on board. And I think that makes those teams maybe more likely.
Yeah. The one team that I do not, well, actually, I think the most likely team, or the one that I'm seeing the most buzz of right now, is the Chargers, which isn't exciting, or Pittsburgh. Neither of those seem all that exciting, but especially, I mean, the one that I'm hearing a lot of buzz about is the Chargers at this point. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, obviously they passed a little more than everybody thought they were going to heading into the season. Everybody's really down on that offense, and their passing offense was a little better than what most people suspected. But I don't know if they would have enough to feed both DK and the lad. So probably a good football move, but not a great fantasy move if that's what ends up happening.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. The other player that I hadn't even on the show notes to talk about today, but was released by the Jets, was Devontae Adams. Could see maybe the Chargers taking an approach like that where they have a young wide receiver in Ladd McConkey and pairing them up. They also have Quentin Johnson. There's ways to try and get that veteran leadership in there as well, but you're not going to have to give up the picks to go along with it, because I do think the Chargers, they need another couple of, and we're talking about the Patriots as well, they need other pieces as well, but the Chargers maybe are in a very competitive division where they're going to be able to make those moves over the next kind of 2 or 3 years rather than immediately. I think there's still, and I'm saying that about a team that advanced this year in the playoffs, obviously. I think that it's interesting, and I think the other part here, we're looking about what it means for fantasy, is you obviously have Tyler Lockett getting released over the last kind of 48 hours or so, and that leads to wide receiver 1 Jackson Smith-Njigba here for the Seahawks, and he came on obviously really strong down the stretch, but we obviously seen Lockett fade out. But is it a case that DK Metcalf also has been seen by the Seahawks to be on the way and sliding down a little bit, or is it just a case that JSN was that good? And then the other flip side is JSN now with not a lot else around him and getting maybe some more coverage coming his way, how that sets him up for this coming season, where you're like, if Metcalf is there, I think he feasts all season long. If Metcalf isn't there, maybe there's some more double coverage, makes it a little bit more challenging for JSN. So I did mention the question with Metcalf based on last season, and it kind of ties into this. Is there still something left in the tank, do you think?
Yeah, I think so.
I think there is. It's just we didn't see it on a consistent basis. That's the one thing. It's you'll have the huge games, but then you'll also it can be a bit feast or famine.
Yeah, and he also got hurt really for the first time in his career. I mean, he's always played. He's probably gotten dinged up here and there, but he actually missed a few games last year, so that was something different. He didn't hit 1,000 yards, but I still think he's good. 1A, 1B, and
don't hit him too hard. He didn't hit 1,000 yards, but he did have 992.
Yeah. We're living in a binary world, 0 or 1. He didn't hit it, so he's a 0.
Yes or no?
Yeah. But what you did say about JSN is really what I think that's really going to if he does move. I do think that DK staying would probably be the best for him to draw away coverage. But if DK does move, I'm sure they'll bring somebody in, but we'll really get to see the full extent of the player that JSN is, meaning like, is he the superstar, or does he need somebody with him to kind of pull away coverage? So I obviously want to lean towards, yes, he is that good, because everything that we, as a site have said about JSN, leads, points to him being really just a true alpha wide receiver. But I mean, that'll be the true litmus test. We'll see it in reality, how he does as a true, like, unquestioned alpha. And I'm really excited to see that.
I think that they're also, we'll have to watch what the Seahawks then do throughout the draft. And even if they pick up additional capital, if they do move Metcalf, it's going to be interesting, because there really is nothing else. So you have DK, you have JSN, but then, it's, Jake Bobo is the next option. But, the other guys after that are just like non-relatable for fantasy football and probably even as NFL players. Then you've like Noah Fant, AJ Barner. There's just not a lot there, which I think they're going to have to move around, whether they're very confident in their draft targets or whether maybe we see them be able to come to that agreement with DK Metcalf moving forward. It's going to be interesting to see, and that's going to obviously shift up what their ADPs over the coming weeks. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I would like to see some chaos this offseason where, we've seen Deebo Samuel move, who's next up. We're going to see what happens with Cooper Kupp. With Devontae Adams has been cut. We'll see where he lands. Maybe it's beyond him at this stage of his career. But I would like to see some chaos to shake things up and then get the rookie wide receivers in the mix and have some fun with it rather than it just stagnate. But we have moved on to Deebo Samuel. He moves from the commander or to the Commanders from the 49ers. He now is basically, him and McLaurin is an interesting pairing there at the top of that depth chart. Noah Brown then behind that, Jamison Crowder there, Zacchaeus there. They're starting to put some additional pieces. I think the key part here to look at is the additional pieces around Jaden Daniels. Then you have the draft. There's a possibility to recreate some of that. I did see some interesting numbers on Ben Sinnott over the last couple of weeks, suggesting that there is still hope there in terms of moving forward and giving him some comparisons to the likes of a George Kittle. But we'll see if that ever happens. But he's still there on the tight end depth chart. We know how good Jaden Daniels is. Deebo, you mentioned Metcalf being banged up. Deebo's had some injury issues over the last couple of seasons, but the part that really disappointed me in 2024 was the fact that when we didn't have Christian McCaffrey in that lineup, on a consistent basis, missed the majority of the season, and when Deebo was healthy and active, that we didn't see him, show some of the stuff or be used in the way that we have seen him used in the past, in a multitude of different situations. And that was kind of disappointing because it made me feel like the 49ers maybe think that he maybe is no longer capable of that. The other part then, people talk about, getting moved for a 5th round pick. Well, that's mainly down to the contract that he is bringing along with him that the team has to absolve. And the part of that is it talked about it, with the rookie quarterback and Drake May and how that would help things. You obviously have Jaden Daniels, and it's not taking on the same hit as some of the higher quarterback contracts in the league. So he's just turned 29. So basically in this situation, 2 years younger than DK that we talked about a moment ago. And that's where you get into the situation where, like, when we're talking about, like, me and Sean talk a lot about the perpetual window and dynasty and what that means. This is a situation where, like, the team has moved on from DK Metcalf at this point after giving him the big contract. Now, if you are the team that trades for DK Metcalf, you potentially getting yourself into the same scenario here as well. So what is your thoughts on Deebo Samuel for fantasy moving forward? I think it's a good move for the Commanders because you're getting a team that doesn't have a huge amount of talent, even if he's beyond his best. You're getting a talented player in who, although I'm after saying maybe the 49ers didn't think so, he could be used in a multitude of ways. You've seen how the likes of an Austin Eckler, who I certainly thought a couple of seasons ago had lost all of his past attributes, had a strong season when he had Jaden Daniels, pulling the strings there. So Deebo, any chance for renaissance here? What's your thoughts? And is it more a case that this helps the quarterback moving forward rather than it provides an asset here for Deebo Samuel? He may be somebody who becomes a little bit overvalued, when we get into draft season. Hit me with your thoughts rather than me giving all mine.
Well, I'm with you on that. He may be a little overvalued. I mean, it's going to be fun. People, look at Jaden Daniels, and Jaden Daniels is fun. Deebo Samuel is a fun player overall. So I think that he might get a little overdrafted, especially, initially, like looking at, he's already moved up a round or two, I do believe, on Underdog in the past week. So, I mean, people are going to be excited about it. And really the thing that I think about when he was traded is we saw Cliff Kingsbury with a very, very light version of Deebo Samuel. What he did with Rondale Moore when he was in Arizona, it was all around the line of scrimmage. He was, trying to manufacture touches. And I don't think there's really any question that Deebo Samuel is, even at his age now, is a lot better player than Rondale was back then, unfortunately. Uh, but I'm hoping that, obviously it's a different situation. It's years ago. So I'm hoping that Deebo doesn't only get pigeonholed into a line of scrimmage role. Hopefully he does still get like a few down the field targets. I hope he's not only that Rondale Moore, because literally it seemed like Rondale only caught stuff behind the line of scrimmage within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. So at least we know that Kingsbury has it in his bag to use a player like that. But if he could, I guess the question is, will he use him well?
We did see last year with, Daniels and his quick decision making, whether that was the passes, at or behind the line of scrimmage, or also on those kind of shorter intermediate routes in front of the line of scrimmage, slant routes and so on, be able to make those decisions quick. And, when Deebo was in his prime, one of the things we would see was, starting at the right-hand side of the line of scrimmage, crossing across and getting the ball and doing stuff after the catch. And I think that, people talk about the Commanders' offense being a kind of a college-style offense, but I think a lot of that also fits in with Deebo's skill set. But I do think there's some of the same concepts that were being run last year with the 49ers, and he wasn't the primary target on that. And, we look at this time last year, if you'd have said, like, Brandon Ayuk is out for the season, Christian McCaffrey's out for the season, where should Deebo Samuel be drafted for the 49ers? You'd be like, okay, he should be in the second round.
Yeah.
You're looking then at a situation where, like, Juwan Jennings becomes the wide receiver one. So there is red flags there. There was, stuff off the field, not off the field in terms of away from the facility, but off the field in terms of when things happened during games, when they were on the sidelines, that weren't all that positive. But maybe he has been kind of looking for a way out for a little bit of time, or maybe he's seen the writing on the wall for the team. But yeah, Deebo, I think, is a nice move for the Commanders, a nice move to get a first piece here this offseason for Daniels. We'll see then what they add through the draft. This team, I think, could take that step forward very, very quickly. A team who took a huge step forward last year, but sometimes taking that step forward from really bad to, middle of the pack or upper middle can be done with one or two players who transcend a team like Daniels did. But getting from making the playoffs to, trying to win the championship can be, a lot tougher. So excited to see them start to put the pieces, though, around him. Next player that I want to touch on is maybe quick, maybe short, but Christian Kirk was released from the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's had some impressive seasons in recent years, but last year injured, missed a huge amount, was a participant in 8 games, didn't fully play, and all of them had 1 touchdown, 27 receptions. The year prior, on a downturn from his peak season in 2022, was really his final season with the Cardinals in 2021, where he had just short of 1,000 yards, 5 touchdowns. Then he had 1,100 yards in his first season with Jacksonville with 8 touchdowns, but has been moving on a downward trajectory beyond that point. A player who I still think could be a very interesting piece for an offense, and I think he fits probably into an NFL team's wide receiver 3 range. But there is a lot of wide receiver needy teams around the league. And I would even say, like, if you could get him on a reasonable, he got a huge I thought he was hugely overpaid when he left the Cardinals to go to the Jaguars. If a team gets him on a reasonable deal, I think he could be a really good NFL piece to an offense. I'm not sure there's going to be that, standout fantasy value moving forward. Just wanted to get your thoughts on, is there something to be looking at here where he lands, or are you thinking this is the end of the fantasy relevance for Christian Kirk?
I think it is landing spot dependent, but it's most likely the most likely outcome is he's just kind of just a filler piece. Like I said, wide receiver 3. I mean, the thing that,
like I was hitting him for the 2023 season. He did only play in 12 games and had nearly 800 yards. There's still some production there, but I do feel it's capped.
yeah, and they say in 2021 he was the PPR wide receiver 26. In 2022 he's the PPR wide receiver 12. So it's not like he was he wasn't producing at all. He had those good seasons, but it just feels like close to the end of the line. I mean, he's one of those guys I'd be taking a shot on in best ball. I mean, I know he's in like the double digit rounds, probably around like round 13, 14. He's somebody I'd like mix in here or there. But it really, I mean, I think the best case scenario is if he just goes to a really weak depth chart and just kind of gets a lot of volume. And that's one thing that, I mean, he was never playing in 2 wide receiver sets for Doug Peterson in Jacksonville. And that was always the big, ward on his profile is he was only being used in 3 wide receiver sets, and he was still able to do quite a bit. So I'm interested, I guess I should say, but I'm not holding out a ton of hope just for the fact that if he's just a top 2 wide receiver on a team, I mean, he may just come out and surprise us all, but I'm not banking on it.
Yeah, I think that there's some crossover between, the skill set that we've seen from Brian Thomas. Brian Thomas's skill set is kind of that he can do everything, it would appear. But, there's some crossover in the way they used him. Had a lot of money left on that contract, heading into this season. So it made sense to move out in terms of the overall contract. So when we move beyond that, you mentioned, the end of the line. Somebody who is, now entering this season will be turning 32 when we get to the middle of June here. That's Cooper Kupp. Sounds like he's not gone from the Rams, but sounds like he's not going to be with the Rams this season. If they don't get a trade partner, it sounds like he will potentially be cut, but maybe back. They did look like they were, going beyond Matthew Stafford, and he's back for this season, which is obviously massive for Puka here as we move forward. But Cooper Kupp likely on the move. Anywhere that you would like to see him land, and then a bit like the other questions, this is kind of a show already. Second, these veteran wide receivers, are they worth investing in 2025? Cooper Kupp, we touched on him a little bit when we talked a couple of weeks ago. Not much has changed, but RO up obviously for Puka Nacua. Where is that RO for Cooper Kupp?
Looking at his target distribution over the end of the season, you have to say down.
That's the part, like a bit like I touched on with Deebo. Sometimes how the team is using you tells you a lot. And sometimes as fantasy players, as fantasy managers, we may have an expectation heading into the season. Like, for example, the way the Packers used Jaden Reed last year was very disappointing. But it also is very concerning because the team needs to win. The team wants to score points. So it's the same with the Rams and how they went and ended up using Kupp at the end of the season. It was very, very concerning for me. 32 years old, a bit like, the Devontae Adams conversation. These players, I think, can be very helpful parts. Like if you told me Cooper Kupp lands with the Washington Commanders on like a veteran minimum contract, I'm like, oh, sign me up all day long. But, do they want to do that? Will Kupp or Devontae want to take a lower contract, or are they going to try like, this is my final payday in the NFL, I need to get what I can get? And then you end up in a situation where, with Cooper Kupp on the Titans, it's like, so it sounds like not a huge amount of optimism.
No, I mean, I've still been drafting him a little bit. 10th round ADP every once in a blue moon. I'll just, especially if I have kind of weaker wide receiver rooms, I'll just take a chance on him having a bounce back. But it's almost like Kirk, where it really is team dependent. Teams that I think that it might be kind of fun to see him land, like seeing him land maybe on the Broncos, even though it would kind of maybe box out Mims, or just giving him Bo Nix, a reliable target would be fun. The same thing for maybe the Patriots, giving Drake May just a reliable target, somebody he can lean on, would be fun as well, especially if they miss out on a lot of those wide receivers, the bigger names. It doesn't make a ton of sense as far as having them win, but that's more of one of those instances where it's like he's just going to kind of play out his career. But I do believe when they first started talking about him moving, the Rams were talking about if they could trade him, they're trying to move him in a position where he could win. So especially Texans would be a fun spot as well if Diggs doesn't work out, or if his knee isn't maybe as healthy as they like. He would be another fun compliment to Nico. So I think he could still be a fun player. It's just, I think seeing him land with a good quarterback is really going to kind of resuscitate his fantasy value. If he lands somewhere like Pittsburgh or anywhere with a not ideal quarterback situation, is probably just going to kind of mark the end for him.
Yeah, non-stable quarterback environment. Had seen some reports over the last couple of days potentially linking him with the Chicago Bears, which again would be another helpful piece you would think for Williams. But We'll see what happens with those veteran wide receivers. Then when they have the landing spots, we'll talk about them further. But most of them feels like, the last part of the road. But when we look at, Adam Thielen may be the exception, but quite a strong bounce back year last year. We'll see what happens. That would be the exception rather than the rule. That's where we're going to leave our veteran quarterback conversation. I mentioned at the start the RotoViz rookie guide. You can get it up on rotoviz.com. The other key part, if you're interested, is there is inside that guide. It costs $30 for the guide. Inside the guide, there's a $30 coupon to get yourself 30% off a RotoViz NFL pass. So if you are signing up to RotoViz, pretty much get yourself a 2-for-1 there with the free coupon inside. You can check out Kevin, Sean, and Blair's work in that. Kevin, we're going to do a couple of shows here and record them, and then we're going to do a draft. So we have lots of stuff that we're going to be doing that people can check out over the coming days and weeks. But what is in the hopper for yourself? I know you're in the primer series. Anything that you want to hype that's coming up on rotoviz.com?
Well, as soon as we hop off today, I will be writing up the Deebo trade. I'll be going a little deeper into that. So I'm excited to do that because kind of as I brought up with the whole Rondale thing, I'm just real interested in seeing kind of what we can really expect for Deebo. And then also, obviously, you mentioned the RotoViz rookie guide. So it's volume 2 is pretty beefy. We got up to 140 pages. There's tons of comps in there. There's athletic comps and BSS comps in there. So it's awesome. There's 90 plus players and they're now up from 80. So we added some of the big combine risers to the guide, and Sean, updated the profiles and we added new profiles, updated, and we expanded the rankings as well. So, I mean, the rookie guide is awesome. It's really for anybody that's as deep in the weeds and the stuff as we are. It's a must check out. And like you said, it's essentially free. So for anybody that wants to be anybody that wants to have a 1-year RotoViz subscription. So, I mean, there's really no risk in really going out and grabbing it.
Yeah, no downside. So that is where we will leave this edition of, I was about to say RotoViz OT, RotoViz Fantasy Football Show over on the flagship channel. You can check it out over there. You can also check it out on the RotoViz main feed. My name is Colm Kelly. You can follow me on social media at Overtime Ireland. You can follow Kevin at the CapDadFF. And until we are back, have a good one.